Ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to see so many of you here tonight, and I'm honored to be able to say a few words and give you some important news. More than 2 decades ago, when my colleagues and I at the John Locke Foundation decided to create a special project devoted to college and university policy, it was our strong belief that higher education did not receive the level of analysis and attention that it deserved. It represents one of the largest categories of spending in our state, pretty much any state. The University of North Carolina system, the state's community college system, and our private colleges and universities in North Carolina are among our largest institutions and largest employers in the state. Higher education also produces scholarship, sporting events, cultural events, and the arts. It has the potential, at least, to be the preserver of great traditions, a generator of new ideas, and an embodiment of our highest aspirations. As we know, it can also waste a great deal of money and cause a great deal of mischief. In fact, the very first report that the John Locke Foundation published about higher education precedes the creation of the Pope Center by a couple of years, but it was actually called A Tradition at Risk, and it was about problems at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. By the way, its author was a Wisconsin-based scholar named Charles Sykes, who later got a talk show in Milwaukee and does a lot of work in Wisconsin. Has been involved in some recent political news about the presidency, so interesting times. To get back to my story, when the John Locke Foundation decided to name its new project the John William Pope Center for Higher Education Policy, it was to honor one of the founding donors of JLF, who had also served on the UNC Chapel Hill Board of Trustees and had always cared a great deal about higher education, its history, its present, and its future. Mr. Pope was a strong believer in the mission of the Pope Center. Some years after we created it at the Locke Foundation, we decided to spin it off as a separate 501c3 organization. John Pope supported that decision, and the Pope Foundation actually increased its support for the organization as a new freestanding institute. The John W. Pope Center continued to fulfill its mission. It continued to enjoy John W. Pope's respect, and it continued to receive funding from the John W. Pope Foundation. Have I mentioned the name John W. Pope? Well, this is the nature of the problem. Ever since its inception, the Pope Center has had a bit of a branding challenge. Some people think it is the Pope Foundation. By the way, some people think it's the place you go if you really want to learn about Catholicism and you want to convert. So there's a lot of branding problems here, but particularly people mix up the Pope Center and the Pope Foundation. Jenna, I presume, gets a lot of requests for funding for after-school programs and the ballet, things like that. I know I get a lot of people who come to the Pope Foundation, and I think they mean the Pope Center. I've had a number of people come to me at the Pope Foundation to challenge something that Jay Shallad wrote and argue with me about it, which I'm happy to do, but I think they're in the wrong place. Recently, I had a visit. It was a very nice visit from some executives from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And they came in town, and I thought they wanted to compare notes about charitable giving. I don't think I had any notes to compare with them, but I thought I would take the meeting, and we had a great conversation. And they kept asking, now, your position on tenure, and your position on academic freedom, and your position on, and I said, well, yes, I have positions on these, but do you mean the Pope Center? They're down the street. So this is the nature of the challenge that we have decided to do something about. The Art Pope, who's not here tonight but is with us in spirit, the Pope family, and the staff and board of the Pope Foundation all share a strong belief that the Pope Center is doing excellent work, and that if John Pope were alive today, he would be very pleased and proud with this organization. But enough is enough. Several months ago, we and the staff and board of the Pope Center all decided to do something to clarify matters. We began the process of choosing a new name for this organization. I engaged the assistance of my friend Mark McNeely, who is a longtime marketing expert. He's a professor at UNC Chapel Hill's Business School. He helped us conceptualize the process. We had some discussions. We had brainstorming sessions. We came up with a short list of names, and we took and field tested it. Some of you may have been asked about the names that we wanted to field test, and we talked to people who are our audience members to find out what they thought about the various options. We worked on this project for quite a while. We considered it very carefully, and here's what we've decided to do. The organization will now be called the James G. Martin Center for Academic Renewal. Governor Martin is an active supporter. He's a member of our board. His decades of public service to North Carolina, including 6 years on the Mecklenburg County Commission, 12 years in the U.S. House of Representatives, and 8 years as governor, have made our state better in so many ways. One might say that what we got out of it was better schools, better roads, and better jobs. You might say that. But keep in mind that before he was Governor Martin, before he was Congressman Martin, before he was County Commission Chairman Martin, Jim was Professor Martin. He taught chemistry at his beloved alma mater, Davidson College, for 12 years after receiving his PhD from Princeton in organic chemistry. He was an excellent teacher and a tough grader. He continues to care a great deal about academic standards, grade inflation, and diversity of thought on campus, among many other issues. We cannot think of a better thinker and leader for whom to name this organization. The Martin Center for Academic Renewal will keep doing what it's been doing for so many years. It will continue to carry out the donor intent of John Pope and the Pope family, as well as the donor intent of so many other financial supporters, some of whom are here today, and we greatly appreciate your support. And it will lift up the name of someone whose long service to North Carolina deserves to be honored and celebrated. You know, when it comes to celebrating the service of Jim Martin, one might say that I wrote the book on it. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the new namesake of the Martin Center for Academic Renewal, Governor Jim Martin.
Well, thank you for not protesting and storming out of the room. That uplifts me a great deal. I appreciate it. Let me introduce my wife, Dottie, who is here with me this evening. Dottie, wave at the folks here this evening. And I think as the honoree, I should say a few words, and I promise I'll be brief no matter how long it takes, as is my usual custom. You know, as a fellow conservative, and some in the past have even said somewhat moderate conservative, but it depends, as we think freely about what we believe and so forth. But in that capacity, and as a longtime friend of the Pope family, of Art and his wonderful parents, John and Joy, I've always been very impressed and respectful and informed by the work of the Pope Foundation's programs. And it's meant a lot to me as it has to you. But as a former college chemistry professor, one who's been very upset about the erosion of grades with the grade inflation, who has also been very disturbed by the political biases that they were present to some extent way back in the 50s when I was in school. I mean, that's a long time ago, friends. But getting even more so now, to where students have to be protected from conservative thought, as if they somehow can't handle more than one line of thought. And therefore, I've become especially supportive of and fond of the Pope Center for Higher Education Policy, even as now I've got to start learning how to deal with a new name for the center. But it's the same center, and we're going to continue with the same purposes. But in all of our efforts to provide for young people to have exposure to a diversity of society, it seems like one diversity was getting left out, and that is the diversity of intellectual thought and ideology and political thinking. And so this organization has been a stalwart, a bulwark, and all of the other works to be sure that we try to correct that. And that's why the academic renewal part of the name is so very important. And so I've come to admire especially the Pope Center and its work. You know, when my name first got bandied about, I had to announce to the board that I would abstain, not only abstain, but recuse myself from the meetings and discussions. So I'm sure I missed a lot of exciting, probing commentary, and probably for a good thing, because I wanted the board to be able to look at all the pros and cons, to weigh seriously every possible consideration. But yet I assured them that if, after all that, they felt that this was the best remaining choice for them to make, that I would accept and support their decision. I will say to you in closing, finally, that as a fellow conservative and as one who devoted the better part of my political career helping to convert a one-party state into a more competitive, healthier two-party system by building up the newest part, the newest half of that two-party system. There's sometimes people say we went too far with a veto-proof legislature, but you can see with the tight, close results in a number of races how it is a competitive state, and we have to continue to move forward. But as such, I share with you the excitement, the celebration of the national results, the most important part of which I think could well turn out to be the way in which it assures and forecasts a healthier United States Supreme Court for years to come. And thank you all for that.
Jim, thank you. We are thrilled to now be the James G. Martin Center for Academic Renewal.